Let's talk about bridges, baby. Jazzmaster bridges, that is. Now let me say I'm not an expert, but I do have a Jazzmaster and I've done quite a bit of research on bridges. So there are a lot of videos out there on Jazzmaster bridges, and so I don't want this to be just another one, but I want this to kind of be a one-stop shop where I kind of go over everything that may be out there. Maybe it's an exhaustive list, maybe not. If it's not, then you guys can comment below and suggest other bridges that I have not covered. But I want this to kind of be a consolidated place where you get a compact version of information of each bridge, and then you can go out and decide which one's best for you. So the videos that are out there on YouTube, a lot of them say, well, here's the bridge I like, here's the bridge I got, here's it installed, maybe they got a sound sample, maybe they go over the features, but it's kind of like, this is the one for me, so maybe it's the one for you, which is fine, I understand that. And I'll show you the one that I currently have on my Jazzmaster, but I want you to be able to know all of the options out there. And let me say, if you don't already know about Jazzmasters, the whole reason for people changing out the bridge is because you get rattling with loose intonation screws and screw post, and you don't have a lot of string pressure. There's not a lot of break angle over the back of the bridge, so you have a lot of problems with just noise. And let me say this, a lot of people talk about bridges, but they don't really cover sort of the big things. So there's two big things, all right? Two big things that people don't talk about a lot. String spacing is one, and then radius of your neck is another. So string spacing, neck radius, all right? So let me start with kind of the be-all, end-all, in most people's opinions, version of the best bridge. So that would probably be the Mastery bridge. Now Mastery is a company out of Minnesota. So the Mastery bridge is a stainless steel bridge itself, and then the saddles are solid brass, but they are covered in a hard chrome plating. So brass is soft material, but the hard chrome plating it helps with wear resistance. Because if you got a steel string and you got using your vibrato a lot, cutting on that brass saddle, it's going to wear out over time. Now, granted, Telecaster saddles have been like that forever, and if you found a vintage one and it had slots in it cut from strings, it would probably be the best thing ever if it was straight from 1952. But this is modern times, and maybe you don't want your saddles being sliced up by your strings. So the hard chrome plating is on the brass saddles. Now the spacing, the Mastery has the 52 millimeter string spacing. Okay, so that's going to keep your strings, your high and low E strings, off the edges of your fretboard and give you a little bit more room. Typically, your standard, well, if you went for the Mustang bridge, and I'll talk about that later, it's got a 55 millimeter spacing. So that's a benefit of the Mastery. Another thing is they have 4 intonation screws versus 6, I guess, and I'm not sure, maybe I'll read up some more about that. There's a 2 saddle design, so instead of like 6 individual saddles, the 2 saddle design helps in this way. So on a normal saddle, you've got 18 pounds of pressure, I guess downward pressure on each saddle. So 6 individual saddles, you got the weight is about 18 pounds. But with the Mastery, because you've got shared weight, it adds more weight, more pressure, and you got about 50 pounds of pressure on each saddle. That correlates to transferring vibration into the body and resonance and things like that. So the Mastery can do any neck radius, I guess, with the adjustments. Like a vintage, more like a vintage specs Jazzmaster is a 7 1/4 inch radius neck. Some of the other ones, some more modern ones, are 9 1/2 inch radius. Now let's talk about the price, because Mastery may be the best, but it's also the most expensive. It's about $165. Actually, the last time I looked, it was more like $170, so it may have gone up even more. Plus shipping, plus tax, maybe. I guess if you're not in Minnesota, then you're not gonna have tax on that. But so, like for me, I bought a Squier Vintage Modified Jazzmaster for $293. I just remember that number. But so for me to justify spending another $175 just on a bridge, I don't know. And I may end up one day buying it, and you know, if I really love this guitar and just feel like it's the right thing. Now the Mastery bridge does have some issues with it as well. There's a forum called offsetguitars.com, and it's really probably the go-to place for any information concerning Jazzmasters or Jaguars. They've got a lot of stuff there, so if you want to research any of this stuff further, I would recommend that site. Apparently there's a whole thread about issues with the Mastery Bridge. I haven't opened that up and taken a look at that. Again, this is kind of an overview of all these things, so we're not going to go into all super details about each bridge, but know that there are issues with the Mastery. Another thing I heard somebody say on YouTube is the Mastery Bridge looks a little over-engineered, which if you're a true pure vintage kind of person, maybe the Mastery Bridge isn't for you, because it does look kind of futuristic. It's probably not the first thing someone looks at when they look at your guitar, but just keep that in mind. It looks really cool in my opinion. I can appreciate the design. I also can understand someone thinking that it looks a little too over-engineered. I missed something about the intonation screws. So there's only four intonation screws on the Mastery, and it has a two-saddle design. So again, I don't exactly know how that works, but I can only assume that you can intonate the bridge really well. Otherwise, people wouldn't rave about it and it wouldn't cost so much money. So somehow with the four intonation screws, you can still intonate everything perfectly. And it also has some kind of swivel mechanism. So feel free to go on Mastery and research it for yourself. I'm just trying to give you an overview. So that's the Mastery Bridge. Okay, so maybe second in line, I think, but we're kind of right up there with the Mastery, is the Staytrem bridge. So Staytrem is out of the UK. It's based on a Mustang bridge. So we'll talk about the Mustang bridge in a little bit. But the neck radius, you can get it in a 7 1/4 or 9 1/2. And when I talk about neck radius, that is basically the curvature of the top of the fretboard. So like a Les Paul is like a 12-inch radius. So it's more of a flat radius. Think about a big circle and a bigger diameter, and a tighter circle is going to have a more like a steep slope. So 7 1/4 is really like kind of a hump. I mean, you can't really visually see it, but you can probably feel it in your fingers. 9 1/2 is kind of middle of the road. I think 9 1/2 is what the standard kind of Stratocaster and Telecaster neck radiuses are. So the Staytrem, you can either get 7 1/4 or the 9 1/2, which kind of covers your bases for Jazzmasters. And these also apply to Jaguars as well, I'm assuming. I don't know a ton about Jaguars, but I think you can kind of like transfer all this information to a Jaguar. The Staytrem has the 52mm spacing, so that's going to keep your strings off the edge of the fretboard. Again, we got the neck radius, we got the string spacing are good. So the Staytrem it's all stainless steel, all right? And it has plastic bushings for the post screws. And it also has plastic disc for the intonation screws. So on the back of the bridge where you put in your screws for intonation, moving those saddles back and forth, it has a plastic disc back there to cut down on any noise from the intonation screws. Now the price of the Staytrem is a little bit more reasonable, $85 with shipping. So it's coming from the UK, so you can expect, I'm assuming, shipping to be a little bit more than you would get in the States, somewhere like Minnesota, from the Mastery. We've talked about the Mastery and the Staytrem. Let's talk about a little bit about materials. So stainless steel is more dense than carbon. I think probably the typical standard Jazzmaster bridge is probably made of carbon steel with a coating, like a chrome coating or something of the sort. So stainless is more dense than carbon, so your Staytrem and your Mastery, keep in mind, are stainless. And then steel, has more sustain than brass. So brass is going to give you more of kind of a warmer sound. So keep that in mind. The Mastery has those brass saddles with the hard chrome plating, but it does have brass saddles. The Staytrem is all stainless, so it's going to be a little brighter maybe. I think that's all on the Mastery and Staytrem. Okay, so let's talk about the Mustang bridge. The Mustang bridge, so a lot of people's kind of solution to the Jazzmaster bridge is the Mustang bridge. They're like, oh, just get a Mustang bridge, it's the perfect solution. Everything, your worries will go away. So what they don't talk about is the radius of the Mustang bridge. The Mustang bridge is a 7 1/4 inch radius. If you have like an old school Jazzmaster, then you're good to go because it probably has a 7 1/4 inch radius neck. But if you have, I think, some of the Japanese ones, or maybe the reissues of the Americans, I'm not positive. I know the Squire has the 9 1/2 inch radius. So like for my sake, I was looking at the Mustang bridge, but it has different neck radius and it cannot be adjusted unless you get creative with it. Now I have seen people, someone on YouTube had like they cut aluminum soda can bottles and they made little slivers of aluminum and they would stick them under the saddles of the Mustang bridge to kind of like get approximately the same radius as their neck, the 9 1/4. Which, if you do that, to me, that's like, it's not really a solid transfer from the saddle to the bridge to the body. You're just adding more kind of like gaps and things that where it's not a true transfer to me in my mind. So that's kind of like putting a band-aid on it to me. Now the other thing about the Mustang bridge is it has the 55mm spacing. So you could have your strings pretty close to the edge of the fretboard. So those things right there are kind of like some things that are not the greatest about the Mustang bridge. Maybe they're cons, so pros and cons. Now the Mustang bridge is chrome plated, I'm assuming carbon steel. I don't know if you do, please let me know, but that's my assumption, that it's chrome plated carbon. Let's talk about some of the other options. Another option is the Tune-o-Matic bridge. Now this is the kind of bridge you find on the Les Paul. The problem with this one is it has a 12-inch radius because Les Pauls have a 12-inch radius neck. And you also have to remove the post bushings from your modern Jazzmaster or the modern style Tune-o-Matics. You would have to remove the post bushings in your Jazzmaster. So that means you take the bridge out, you still got these steel kind of cylinders in there. So you got to find a way to pop those out, which may not be easy, could be very difficult. You risk, really jacking your guitar up, scratching it, things like that. That's doable, but it's not easy. The other option is to use, if you have a vintage Tune-o-Matic, is you can put tape around the post, and that makes the bridge where it won't move around. But again, you're talking about tape being the medium of transfer between the vibration of the strings and the body. So that's going to kind of dampen it in my mind. And also, if you're using the vibrato, the Jazzmaster is designed to have that rocking bridge so that it's rocking on those two screws of the bridge. And if you do something like this, then you're really probably going to put wear and tear on the grooves of your saddles because that's taking all the movement of your strings with the vibrato. Okay, so another option would be maybe to keep your original bridge but replace the saddles with Graphtech saddles. Now I personally actually have Graphtech saddles on my Telecaster. I'm still on the fence about whether I like them or not. I really kind of like the sound of the brass saddles. I've got some issues with that I won't go into with my particular Telecaster. The Graphtech saddles are about $46. I didn't talk about the Mustang price. I think you could probably get a Mustang bridge for around $25 from what I remember. So that's the Mustang. Graphtech is about $45 just for the saddles, not any kind of bridge, but just the saddles. So it has, from what they say, it has 25% more sustain than brass and it has 15% more sustain than steel. It's also supposed to be kind of self-lubricating. So if you wanted to stabilize your bridge with some method like tape or what have you, and you're using your vibrato, those Graphtech saddles are kind of self-lubricating. It has a different kind of a sound. So typical bridge saddles have like a 2 kilohertz spike is what Graphtech says. And Graphtech does not have that spike. It kind of has a more even across the board EQ coming off the strings and the saddles. So a lot of people, they're just used to that 2K. Like, people just like the sound of like a Strat and a tube screamer because it has the mid hump, but it just works. Like maybe it's not a even EQ, it's not flat, but people like it. They're used to the sound and it just works. So with the Graphtech saddles, it does have maybe like a more even sound, but is that something that you want? Okay, so the last one I'll cover is the type of bridge that I have. Let me find my guitar real quick to show you. I'm going to show you a picture. The kind of bridge I got is pretty inexpensive, probably made in China or somewhere like that, but probably carbon plated with chrome. What it is, it's almost identical to the original Jazzmaster bridge, except the saddles have a single groove instead of the multi, indentations on there. From what I understand, I asked the person I bought mine from on eBay what the string spacing was, and they said 55 millimeters. It doesn't have that more narrow spacing of the Mastery and the Staytrem. but I personally haven't had any issues with it. The other benefit of this one is, you know, well, the real benefit is you don't get the strings popping out of the grooves of your bridge like you would on a normal Jazzmaster bridge, because it has those big single grooves. And then you can also adjust each saddle individually to whatever neck radius you want, which you can do on the normal Jazzmaster bridge as well. But so you got the neck radius covered, and then what it doesn't do is really cut down on any noise just in and of itself. What I did was I took Teflon tape and put it around almost every screw, I think, except the intonation screws. I did the post, and I did the saddle screws for height adjustment. Put Teflon tape on there, and it does cut down a lot on the noise. I actually have on my vibrato arm, like the assembly housing, I think the spring in there rattles a little bit for me sometimes. If it happens, I just kind of push down harder on my trim arm, vibrato arm, and it goes away. Something I kind of have to like fight a little bit. I guess that's a good time to interject that Mastery also makes the vibrato itself, and that's another $175-ish. So you're spending a pretty penny if you buy like the whole thing from Mastery, like $350, which again is more than you're gonna pay. Well, it's almost as much as you're gonna pay for like the whole vintage modified Jazzmaster from Squier. Okay, I think I've covered everything. If I'm not, then I'll go back and fill in the gaps. Thought I'd show you my guitar real quick while I have the chance. So I've got maybe 4 or 5 other videos on this exact guitar, where I got it, how much I paid for it, what I did to it, all sorts of details, probably more than you want to know. Those things are out there. There's a random hair or something flying. Here, if you can look at this and see, is the bridge that I have on my guitar. And it's that one from, I guess, China. And it's got some tape on it, but hopefully you can't see that. That's what I have now. I may upgrade further in the future, but that's what I currently have. Check out those videos if you want. I'll show you also the string spacing on my neck here at the edge of the fretboard, that you can see there. Now, for mine, I had to get the nut replaced because it was cheap plastic. And the person who did it did a really good job as far as slotting and everything. But if you look at it, I kind of wish that everything was slid over this way a little bit towards the high E string, because the low E string is a little bit closer to the edge of the fretboard, and as you get down here, it's more evident. I haven't really had any kind of issue playing it thus far. It's just sort of in the back of my mind that it's like that, and you can see that if you really look close on the nut. Yeah, this is bone, so it sounds way better as far as intonation, and it's not as high. It plays a lot better. I'm satisfied with it in every regard except that little bit of spacing difference. So yeah, and I'm also going to try to show you some of the things I went through with the bridge I installed on mine, how I did it, and any kind of issues I ran into. So you're going to see that at the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you will, if you want to, and if you don't, no problem. Thanks for watching anyway, and hope this helped you. We'll see you soon. Thanks. I found out that the original bridge and this other bridge I got from eBay have the same screw sizes for the posts. These are pointed, as I noted in another video concerning the neck, on the ends there, so they fit down in the little bushings. You can see there's like a little concave portion at the bottom there. It comes to a point, so these screws at the point help to kind of settle that bridge in there. So I'm going to put those on this other bridge, and just from the finish, it looks like the bridge main portion itself of these are finished the same, kind of like a chrome finish, but it looks like the actual saddles on the other one, or on the original, are like a nickel finish, and these are chrome on the other one that I got. So just to note that. Also, the screws, these long screws are very long on the original, and these are shorter, but vice versa. The screws that hold the actual saddles, or they adjust them up and down, are longer on this newer saddle, and they are shorter on the original. So just some differences I noted. I'm going to put some Teflon tape on the screws in the post. On the bridge, I'll just give you a little audible example. This is the newer bridge. I don't know if you can hear. There's a little shaking going on. This one's louder, the original. So even without the post screws in there, something's going on. I don't know. I'm gonna have to Teflon tape almost everything maybe to get rid of that rattle. Alright, got my Teflon tape on those screws, so let's put them on. Alright, here's what I did with the bridges. So what I did, I took the original post screws out of the original bridge and I put them in the new bridge and put Teflon tape on them. And I also took out the saddle posts or saddle screws. I noted that these were longer. I swapped these, so now the taller screws are in the original bridge. But I really didn't like the aesthetics of that. I didn't even think about that, but it really doesn't look nice to have all those sticking up. So I like this one where the screws are either flush or recessed in there. I did put Teflon tape on those as well. And granted, this is a little bit of work to do all that versus spending, a lot more money on the bridges. I don't know if I feel like I noted this somewhere else, but there's a little bit of discoloration on the bottom of this bridge. It's either rust or it's discoloration from the weld. I don't see it being a real problem. I don't think this newer bridge is any less quality than this one. They're probably made even in the same place. I don't know if it's from China or Indonesia or what. The guitar is supposed to be made in Indonesia, but I don't know about the hardware. But anyway, so let's just give it a quick shake test. So this is the original bridge, and you can kind of hear. Let me put it up close to the mic. So a whole lot of shaking going on, rattling it, or rather. And I haven't really screwed a lot of this stuff down. I just put it back as kind of a placeholder. This is the one with all the Teflon tape on it, the bridge I'm going to install, and put it up to the mic. I don't hear anything. So hopefully that should cut down on some of the noise. Now to install it and string it up. And I did, while I'm thinking about it, I did take really good just pictures and things, not necessarily measurements. I tried to get I did take measurements of the bridge height, and I'll try to maybe put some pictures of what I did for that. I took some feeler gauges and took the distance from the bottom of the pickguard to the top of the pickguard to the bottom of the bridge, and on both sides, just to get an idea, a starting point. And then I tried to kind of get the same radius on this new bridge as the old one had. So as far as I know, this is the only radius gauge I have, but it's really kind of crappy. So here's 9.5, which, yeah, it looks like it's 9.5. But then when you go 10, I mean, it's not a lot of difference, but it's hard to tell. I mean, I know I'm not supposed to do it really, probably on the frets. I don't know. I mean, I think 7.25 is. I don't think it's 7.25 because there's a gap there on the top of the radius. So I don't think it's 7.25. It's probably 9.5, and then 10 and 12 is just, I don't know. This is paper. So I printed it out from pickguardian.com. I guess you can probably just Google it and find it, but it's surely not an accurate way to measure. You can get an idea, like if on the new bridge here, I haven't even done this yet, but so it's kind of close, fairly accurate on the 9.5-inch radius. But I am going to set the guitar up once I install everything. Okay, I think that's it for the time being. These are my strings of choice, and I'll explain just briefly here why. I have a Les Paul, and Les Paul has a different scale length than the Fenders have. And I usually have 10s on my Les Paul, and because of the scale length and the tension of the strings, which I'm not going to try to explain here, but I may do it in another part of the video or something. I may not, I don't know. But if you say you have the same strings on a Gibson and a Fender, they will feel tighter on a Fender. So if I have 10s on the Gibson, then the 9s will feel essentially the same on the Fender.
whether it be a Strat or Tele or Jazzmaster. To get a little bit beefier on the lower end strings, I'm going to go with the hybrid slinky, because I'm not really bending the lower strings like I would the higher strings. So that's really where I want the flexibility on the higher pitched strings, and the lower doesn't matter as much, but I'd like to have as much sort of thickness as possible on the low strings. So this is why I'm going with the hybrid slinkies.